We're back with the Fox News Political Insiders. President Obama is preparing to speak tomorrow following the weekend of chaos in France. Well, that's putting it mildly. It's been a deadly one. Mr. Obama's earlier claims that ISIS was contained. So what does he hope to achieve tomorrow? This will be a solo news conference that we'll see. What will journalists need to ask him about? Again, John, Pat, and Doug are here. Pat, your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is that what the president ought to be doing but will not. The United States has always been the leader of NATO. The president ought to say if France is invoking, we will support it, and we will put a coalition of European military and our Sunni allies and go in there and get rid of these people and not turn Iraq over to the Iranians, which this president is willing to do, or Syria. But he won't do that. And the press needs to ask the president just what evidence does he need to see the stupidity, you should use that word, the failure of his policy and the illusion of it. What failures? There's a string of them. Mr. President, when do you learn?
Wow.
Yeah.
John, let's talk about the refugee situation for a moment. A lot of criticism coming from the GOP presidential candidates. Some of them are saying specifically, I know Bobby Jindal, George Pataki, former governor of New York, will be on this program coming up in a little bit, has said, you know, the refugee problem is something that we have to look at. Do you stop those from Syria coming in? What do you do?
Let me say the first thought I had about that on Friday night was the amazing prescience of Donald Trump, who a month ago spent several days on the stump saying, I'm going to send them all back. All the Syrians are going to go, because he said, have you noticed them? As it was on TV of them coming up into Europe, he said, they're disproportionately young men. He said, how do we know they're not ISIS? Well, and here we find that at least one of them was ISIS, and maybe more.
Potentially. I would say this, though. We did see this after other wars in different countries around the world that were taking refugees. A lot of times they would leave their families behind, and the men would go and try and find work. So there is that aspect.
They can find
and that's
work
very
in Germany.
real.
I don't want them here. I mean, this idea that Ben Rhodes said today on TV that we are vetting them in Iraq before we let them come here. How do you
How are we doing, though? I'm curious about that.
It's a joke.
We have not been able to. There was a story out this week where we have not been able to digitalize many of the forms that deal with immigrants in our country. Like 1 out of 94 of them has been digitalized so that people can access them. Doug?
Harris, most of all, we need leadership on fighting ISIS. We need leadership on making policy for how we're going to deal with refugees. And I tend to agree with Pat and John. We shouldn't take them until and unless we have a system to vet every last one. And we need a president to reach out and rally the nation to take action in a proactive and positive way.
Doug, you know,
something he has not done.
Right. And I think, thinking about it, if I get into Obama's head, he sees himself as the guy that got us out of war. He thinks I got us out of Iraq.
We're in war, John.
I'm saying,
we're in war. It's
Doug,
not over.
Doug, let
it's
me make
not
my
ending
point.
anytime soon.
Doug, let me make my point for a change, okay? You're interrupting. Let me interrupt you again.
Come on. Go ahead.
That the president who got the Nobel Peace Prize, in his head, he sees himself not as a war president. That's why leading from behind in Libya, he didn't want to be the guy doing it. He doesn't want to lead on ISIS. He never had a strategy. We've contained him. This is going to happen again tomorrow. He will be ambiguous. And whoever would have thunk it that the French would be the leader of the West in a war over the United States.
Well,
that's where we're
our
headed.
prayers are with them for the catalyst, if in fact that's the case. Doug, I want to go back with you and let you finish what you were saying.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that we really are at the beginning of a long struggle, Harris. The president has to offer that leadership and bring in the leadership, exactly as Pat said, of the Europeans, the Sunni allies, and make it clear what's at stake, what we're going to do, and that our resolve will never, ever falter. That's something he hasn't done. That's something we need to do, and it needs to be done on a bipartisan basis with the American people being rallied as they were after 9/11.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you.
You know, it's interesting where we stand. President Hollande of France getting ready to make an extraordinary announcement somehow as he meets with his parliamentary members. Our president in Turkey at the G20 summit, stepping away from the economy, they all are, to focus on what's happened in Paris, getting ready to hold a news conference. No, from the three of you, no confidence that the president will show us that there's a strategy moving forward against ISIS.